A, a good day to you all, and thank you for joining us on episode 5 of the Family Business Code. My name is Angela, and I'm the founder of the Gaze series. I'm happy to have you here. For those who are joining us for the first time, thank you for joining. And for those who have been with us from episode 1, thank you for coming back. As we discuss how to run our family businesses, not everything you hear in this series will apply to your business. Take what counts and what doesn't. Someone else will probably have a use for it. So let's join in as we now talk about family governance. As we've gone through the first 4 episodes, we've been mentioning briefly that family business governance is critical for any business. But we need to fully understand what family business governance is all about. It encompasses all the systems, structures, and processes by owned businesses are planned for, how we manage them, how we control them, and how we transfer these systems, structures, and processes to the next generations. Having it in our minds, in our heads, is not as effective as having the governance structure written down, formalized, and enacted. For us to understand the governance structure, we start with the ownership. At the ownership level, the critical questions you have to ask include the shareholding, inheritance of ownership, whether you have a trust, how do you deal with employees who are family members, who is on management, and what is owned by the family vis-a-vis the business. We will delve a bit deeper in a future episode on ownership, but for purposes of this series, I'll briefly talk about some of these areas. When we talk about who has the shares, we are looking at the inception of the business. We are asking who are the shareholders. Shareholders and directors are different from management. They are often also different from signatories, depending on whom we delegate authority to. But when we are opening our businesses, sometimes it's opened by one business owner in collaboration with another party. More often, it's the spouse. And that's because most limited liability companies require a minimum of 2 members to open the business. Sometimes the second party who has shares is not necessarily involved in the running of the business. When we're giving out shares at the start of any business, understanding who gets the majority shareholding is very important because it will determine who has the ownership and control of the business. What often happens is that if we have not set the shareholding very clearly and we've not written our will, we will eventually bring the ownership into dispute or disrepute when family members are fighting over our property, our businesses, and other assets when we are not around. It's advisable that if you're a shareholder, you need to have a will that clearly states how your shares will be distributed on your demise. Death is a certainty for all of us. And once we have understood that, it's better to protect it if we want our legacy to live on. Unfortunately, we fear to write the will because we think we are putting a stamp on our mortality and we're drawing death nearer. That is an unfortunate thinking given the amount of time, effort, and resources we put into getting our businesses to start. So critically look at the shareholding of your business. Preferably get a legal person to help you see how to distribute the shareholding. Look at who comes in as a promoter, someone who is given shares but does not put in capital or income at the very beginning. And also look at the minority shareholders and see what happens if their shares are ever brought under dispute. And ensure that that document is well written and kept away in a security deposit or with a legal firm so that if there are any eventualities like death or divorce, that document can guide you on the shareholding and its continuity. When we talk about writing a will, we never think ahead for our business's legacy and business's continuity and for our legacy to also continue. We need to ask the question, who will inherit ownership of my business? Once you go into this deep, dark area called inheritance, sometimes we find that our emotions take over and we are unable to determine the ownership after we are not there because we fear to think it through to its conclusion. When you're determining who will inherit the ownership, you need to look at the entire family unit and see who is capable of running your vision and continuing the business to prosperity, as opposed to who comes in for the sake of the name. Oftentimes, we prefer to have our firstborn children take over the business, or we expect a spouse to come in and take over the business. But with all families, there are dynamics that are not fully understood. And these dynamics can lead to ownership breakdown, which will then lead to the business collapsing. So sit down and write your will. Do not leave your estate intestate. Do not leave it to the government or to your administrator general's office or any other body government appoints to distribute the ownership of your business, because they do not have the passion, the vision, or even the understanding of where you started from and where you wanted to go. Do not leave the ownership to the individual members of the family, because each has a different vision and they will bring in their own ideas, which will kill your journey and stop it in its tracks. If you want to have ownership well predetermined, it is advisable to consider setting up a trust for the family, such that everything the family does is held under trust. And when you have a trust and a foundation for that matter, you're able to spell all this out with clear direction and with people who have governance in mind. The individuals you appoint to that trust fund or to the trust foundation often have a bigger picture of what you want, because your trust document is very clear on how ownership will continue. So to be able to do or set up a trust, you need to get the guidance of people who have run trust funds before. The beauty about having a trust is that it is a legal entity on its own, and it will not be disputed by individuals, because all family members would have to feed into the trust and meet specific criteria. We also have ownership where members are not only owners, but they're also employees. Not all your family members are going to be employees, and not all the employees will be family members. But for purposes of family governance, you have to be clear about the demarcation between an owner, a manager, and an employee. An employee can also have shares or ownership rights, but they have to deal with each aspect separately. As they work on with the board of directors as part of the owners, they will have a strategic overview, and they'll be able to put in their stake and say as a shareholder with the rights of ownership or certain percentages thereof. But they will also be employees, and they have to adopt to the standards of the workplace based on what the employment terms and ways of working are. So you need to be clear that you may be an owner, you may have percentage shareholding, but if you are an employee, the organization has its own set standards and ways of working, which must be adhered to. Therefore, ownership cannot give that family employee the right to override decisions that are made at a shareholding decision-making meeting or any agreement to that effect. When you have ownership, some owners may also be in the management team, and they also have to adhere to your management style. If they're a non-executive director or manager, they will also be involved in the strategic direction of the organization. But they must have a difference between management on the ground and managing team members, and the management at a strategic level as a director. These rules, these conditions have to be put in place. To be able to get your team to understand ownership and shareholding, you have to teach them and skill them in what directors do, in what governance is about. They need to go for leadership courses, and they also need to have management training so that they can learn to see the difference between management and ownership. You should also be very clear on how people rise up to ownership of shares, and also how they rise up to management of teams. These are two separate structures: the internal, ongoing, operational, and the strategic aspects that the directors handle. Finally, on ownership, we need to know what is owned by the family vis-a-vis the business. Usually, as a family business, it's easy to commingle your family assets into the business. You will pull in resources from the family and inject them into the business. You need a good financial system that is able to say person A, B, or C has injected this much capital, and whether it will be repaid back or whether it will be returned. Is it coming in as shareholding percentages? Is it coming in specifically as a borrowing, as equity, or is it coming in and be as a gift to the company? Oftentimes, family may have very many businesses which fall under what we call the family enterprise. The family enterprise could have several businesses, but not all businesses have the same structure, systems, processes, or even members working within that business. So within your family enterprise as a whole, separate what is for the family and what is for the business. And when you commingle them or intermingle them, have clear documentation that shows the terms and conditions with which the family is placing those assets into the business, and how they'll be repaid back, or whether they are being given to the business for posterity. We also look at management a bit deeper as we look at the governance structure. Do family members take up management positions? Sometimes some businesses will only stop at giving ownership, but may not want family members to take up management positions. You could determine that the CEO will always be a family member, and that leadership positions could be strictly from family members, especially if the pool of family members who are working for the business is large enough to cover the positions. Critical for management is that you have the right skills and experience, the right qualifications, and also management should be trained so that they can understand their role. There are times you'll employ non-family members who are better skilled than family members. This should not deter you. A family business is about family. Taking up majority of the positions, especially when it's on first and second generation. So take the opportunity to really skill your team members who are from the family to take up these positions and get as good as they can get in managing the teams. You should also be able to, I would say, mentor the non-family members who would want those positions, that it's a family business, and try to manage the conflict that may arise from resentment from non-family management team members. Therefore, determine under your governance structure what criteria you're going to use for people to take up management positions. What is your management structure? Is it going to be kept formal or informal? Are you going to have a decentralized decision-making process where some decisions are made from the family unit and then cascaded to the business? Or are you going to have a decision-making process that comes from within the organization with a mix of both family members and non-family members? Look at the qualifications your family members have. If they don't have the right qualifications, use that opportunity to help them grow in skill, experience, and qualification. If you have a formal organizational structure, start grooming your family members at a young age to fit within that structure. Take them to office with you. Teach them the ropes so that they get that experience from a young age. And by the time they're taking up formal employment within the business, they are strong enough to do the role. You have to know that you can reprimand and exit non-performers, and family employees are not an exception to this rule. If you cannot reprimand a specific member of the family, do not employ them, because everybody errs and to err is human. Therefore, you must be able to reprimand them when they have done something wrong. And at the same time, if they are non-performers, the exit process should be very clear so that the family member knows that they are accountable for their work. And if they don't perform, they can easily be exited. Do you have a clear and fair family employment policy? To show all family members that they're eligible, you must have clear guidelines on how, when, where, and in what way family members can join the employment. And once they do, what employment policy they'll be following. We tend to have employment policies for the general business, but when it comes to family employment, we find we are still employing families and working with them even outside the gambit of their working hours. You find that you're having discussions on the weekend. You're pulling family members into a Christmas getaway, and at the same time, you're carrying laptops to complete work. And therefore, the family member who is employed by the organization does not really have a structured time management system. So make sure that your family employment policy is clear with all those details, and as more arise, addendums should be attached to the policy so that it's a continuous improvement process. How are you going to handle training and skilling of your family members? Are you going to take them for cheapskate trainings simply because you're filling in and ticking the boxes? Or would you be in a position to say you want them to have the best and therefore take them to the right business schools and engage them in skilling programs that are appropriate for them to grow and to run and grow the organization? How are you going to manage remuneration of family members? These are critical questions, and we will delve further as we go through further episodes. Critical is that you look at ownership and management in depth. Have discussions with your family members in a family council meeting to iron out any questions they'll have in among these areas and any other areas or issues that may arise or that they will raise and that should be justifiably looked at in context of their family position vis-a-vis working in the organization. I want to take this opportunity to also talk a bit deeper about vision, mission, and goals. For you to be able to take the family forward, the family business forward, you also need to understand the direction your family wants to take. Your vision, mission, and goals may have been old and archaic, and you have younger family members who are now more tech savvy. They understand things are fast paced. They are willing to take risks. They are willing to diversify. To be able to understand how your vision, mission, and your goals are growing, you need to sit with the family and ask which direction they would want to take the business. Even the young ones who are still in school may have a vision or dream of a future direction that the family should take. So you need to teach them what the purpose of the business is and then banter with them or discuss what the purpose of the business is, after which you look at the different areas different family members can focus on. To do this, you must have regular sit downs with the family. Talk about this in a jovial mode so that you can actually delve deeper into their understanding and into how they see the family business. Ask yourself, do you have a family mission statement? Family mission statements are not solely developed by you as the original owner. Family mission statements should be written collectively. So take the step to collect all the mission statements as different individual family members think about them. Pick out what the key areas are that are common among all the family members, and then leave with a consensus on what the final family mission statement is so that you have the buy-in and the excitement cascaded to all the family members. You should also know what the intention is of keeping the family in the business. Because businesses grow, they are more than likely going to bring in non-family member employees. So you need to ensure that you have a clear vision and you're able to follow through and also have family members know that they have a place within the organization. Finally, what are the governing principles and values the family lives by? Once you have a full and clear value system, the family then should try to emulate that value system, and it should then be cascaded to the rest of the organization. At this juncture, I'd like to thank you for listening, and I look forward to seeing you in episode 6. Thank you for listening, and have a pleasant day.